What if I told you that the world we live in today, your technology, rights, even the shape of your country, was shaped by a single event? World War II wasn't just a war. It was a global earthquake that shattered old ways of life and built the foundation of our modern world. It's a story of unimaginable destruction, yes, but also of innovation, resilience, and transformation. Have you ever wondered why we have the United Nations? Or how your phone traces its origins to wartime breakthroughs? What about the everyday freedoms many of us take for granted? These are not accidents. They're part of a chain reaction set off by the most devastating conflict in human history. But the war didn't just change nations. It redefined humanity itself. From the political boundaries of Europe to the rise of the US as a superpower, from the end of colonial empires to the dawn of civil rights movements, the ripple effects of World War II are still felt today. So what were the defining moments that reshaped everything? And why do they matter now more than ever? Stay with me, because the answers might just surprise you. This is the untold story of how World War II didn't just end in 1945. It began a new chapter for the entire world, the global aftershocks. World War II wasn't just a conflict between nations. It was a seismic event that shattered old power structures and redrew the map of the world. In its wake, the globe found itself transformed, with new borders, alliances, and rivalries shaping the modern era. To understand the magnitude of these changes, let's look at how the war created an entirely new world order. The rise of superpowers. Before World War II, the world was a patchwork of empires. Britain, France, and Japan were dominant players. But by the war's end, two unlikely superpowers emerged: the United States and the Soviet Union. America's economic and military strength skyrocketed during the war, with its industries producing everything from tanks to bombers. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, despite suffering devastating losses, emerged as a dominant force in Eastern Europe after its pivotal role in defeating Nazi Germany. This new dynamic marked the end of European dominance. Britain, drained financially and militarily, could no longer maintain its global empire. The war's aftermath signaled the beginning of the Cold War, a tense rivalry between the US and the USSR that would define global politics for decades. The Iron Curtain falls. One of the most visible changes was the division of Europe. Germany, the epicenter of the war, was split into East and West. The western portion, backed by the US and its allies, became a hub of democracy and capitalism. The eastern portion, controlled by the Soviet Union, became a communist bloc. This stark division became the front line of the Cold War, symbolized by the Berlin Wall, which would stand for nearly 3 decades. Eastern Europe as a whole fell under Soviet influence, creating satellite states like Poland, Hungary, and Romania. This redrawing of borders wasn't just political, it reshaped millions of lives. Families were divided, and entire populations were uprooted as new regimes took control. The end of empires. The war also spelled the death knell for colonial empires. Britain and France, weakened and discredited, faced growing resistance from their colonies. In India, leaders like Mahatma Gandhi intensified their push for independence, culminating in India's liberation in 1947. Across Africa and Asia, movements for self-determination surged, leading to the eventual collapse of European empires in the decades following the war. The Middle East also underwent significant changes. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire after World War I had already destabilized the region, but World War II accelerated the process. The establishment of Israel in 1948, fueled by the horrors of the Holocaust, redrew the region's political landscape and set the stage for ongoing conflicts. Asia transformed. Asia, too, saw dramatic shifts. Japan, once an imperial power, was reduced to ruins. Under US occupation, it rebuilt itself as a democratic nation and economic powerhouse. Meanwhile, China emerged from the war in turmoil, with a civil war between the nationalists and communists eventually leading to the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949. The human cost of redrawing borders. These changes didn't come without immense human suffering. The partition of India and Pakistan led to one of the largest mass migrations in history, with millions displaced and hundreds of thousands killed in the resulting violence. In Europe, the forced relocation of ethnic Germans and other minorities created waves of refugees. The scars of these displacements still linger today. The new power dynamics. Ultimately, the global power dynamics shifted irreversibly. The war's victors, chiefly the US and the Soviet Union, set the tone for international relations, creating institutions like the United Nations to maintain peace. However, the tension between democracy and communism, capitalism and socialism would lead to proxy wars and conflicts that defined the latter half of the 20th century. In just a few short years, World War II dismantled centuries-old empires, redrew borders, and forged a new world order. These aftershocks continue to shape our world, influencing everything from geopolitics to cultural identities. The question remains, were these changes inevitable, or could history have taken a different path? A new world order. The devastation of World War II left humanity facing a profound question. How could such a catastrophe be prevented from ever happening again? The war's unimaginable loss of life and destruction sparked a collective resolve among nations to build structures that would promote peace, stability, and collaboration. Out of the chaos emerged a new world order defined by institutions designed to govern everything from diplomacy to economics. Let's explore how these organizations came to life and why they remain pivotal today. The United Nations. In 1945, the United Nations, UN, was born from the ashes of its predecessor, the League of Nations, which had failed to prevent World War II. The UN was designed to be stronger, with a clear mandate to maintain international peace and security. The signing of the UN Charter by 51 nations symbolized a shared commitment to diplomacy over warfare. Unlike the League, the UN was equipped with tools like the Security Council, which gave major powers like the US, the Soviet Union, China, France, and Britain permanent seats and veto authority. This structure was a double-edged sword. It ensured the participation of powerful nations, but also created potential deadlocks during the Cold War. The UN became a hub for conflict resolution, humanitarian aid, and global cooperation, addressing issues like human rights, health crisis, and post-war reconstruction. Its impact is still felt today through agencies like UNICEF, UNESCO, and the World Health Organization, WHO. NATO, a military alliance for collective defense. As tensions between the US and the Soviet Union escalated into the Cold War, Western nations recognized the need for collective security. In 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, was formed as a military alliance to deter aggression from the Soviet bloc. NATO's founding principle, an attack on one member is an attack on all, was a powerful deterrent. It solidified cooperation among Western nations and served as a counterbalance to the Warsaw Pact, the Soviet Union's equivalent alliance. Over the decades, NATO has expanded its role, adapting to new threats like terrorism and cyber warfare. The Marshall Plan. Recognizing that a shattered Europe could become a breeding ground for extremism and instability, the U.S. launched the Marshall Plan in 1948. Officially called the European Recovery Program, it provided $13 billion, over $150 billion today, to rebuild European economies. This unprecedented act of economic aid not only helped Europe recover, but also strengthened ties between the U.S. and Western Europe. It curbed the spread of communism and laid the groundwork for European integration, eventually leading to the formation of the European Union. A new beginning. The institutions that emerged after World War II were humanity's response to the horrors of conflict. They reshaped the way nations interact, creating frameworks for peace, progress, and prosperity. Their legacy is a testament to our ability to learn from history and strive for a better future, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. The question now is whether these institutions can adapt to meet the challenges of the 21st century, or if a new era of global collaboration is needed.